I'm going to call a special meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on Monday, July 22nd, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber. The prayer will be offered by Alderman at Large Mike O'Brien, and the pledge will be led by Alderman Clee.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with the spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help me God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance, please.
Thank you. Madam President, Alderman O'Brien is present. Alderwoman Timmons is absent. Alderman Moran has joined us on.
Yes, I'm here via Zoom. I'm traveling for business. I'm currently in my cabin in Sandy, Oregon. I am alone, and my kids are in the next rooms.
Okay, Alderman Thibodeau. Here. Alderman GOV. Here. Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderman Clemens. Alderman Senate.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Theobald.
Here.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Here.
And Alderman Wilshire.
Here.
Okay, you have 13 present.
Thank you. Tonight is a public hearing, and I am going to turn the meeting over to Alderman Dowd, Chair of the Budget Review Committee.
All right, tonight we have a public hearing on a couple of resolutions. The first is R-24-063 relative to the acceptance and appropriation of $500,000 from the State of New Hampshire Department of Business and Economic Affairs Invest New Hampshire Demolition Grant Program and approval for the city to grant said funds to Blaylock Holdings, LLC for demolition of the Mohawk Tannery site through a grant agreement. Is there someone here that's going to speak to this? Director Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt Sullivan, Community Development Director for the City of Nashua. I'm here on behalf of R-2463, and I'm also joined this evening by members of the Mohawk Tannery or Veterans Memorial Parkway Redevelopment District team, Mr. Bernie Plant and Attorney Brad Westgate, who I think you've seen as part of several conversations associated with this project. Like you've heard many times, this piece of legislation before you this evening represents a very small piece of the puzzle, if you will, when it comes to the redevelopment of this property. And specifically, what's contemplated by R-2463 are really two actions. One, appropriation of $500,000. The reason for that is that this grant was not actually contemplated within the fiscal 2025 budget. It was a bit unanticipated. However, monies became available through the Invest New Hampshire or State of New Hampshire demolition grant program that the Bureau of Economic Affairs is currently running. And therefore, we applied for those monies in partnership with the developers of the Mohawk Tannery site. These monies are specifically earmarked for demolition activities, and that can include both remediation and actual structural demolition associated with projects that will create housing opportunity across the state of New Hampshire. And so municipalities with private developer partners are entitled to apply for these funds. We were successful in applying and being awarded $500,000 that will flow directly to the city should this resolution be approved, and then ultimately will flow through to those doing the demolition or the remediation. In this case, that will be Blaylock Holdings and the team there. One nuance to this particular grant is the way that we'll ultimately be structuring this is this will be a reimbursement-based grant, meaning that when the demolition work is complete or remediation work is complete in the amount of $500,000, Blaylock Holdings will issue a request for fund reimbursement directly to the city. They'll have to provide certification that the demolition activities were done in accordance with Invest New Hampshire guidelines and, of course, with the EPA requirements as well. And then the city will then provide a check to them in the amount of $500,000. And that's actually that's a requirement of the Invest New Hampshire grant program. I'm happy to answer any questions about the specifics of how this grant might work, but again, the city is only entitled to apply for these funds because of the very project that they're associated with, and therefore I'm very enthusiastic and supportive of moving forward with this resolution and hope to get your support this evening. Thank you.
Are there any questions for clarification on the legislation? Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just so that I understand this, this is just going to pass through the city and with the provision that we do oversight. That's what that reimbursement, they prove to us that they've done it, and then we cut the check to up to the $500,000. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, if I may respond.
Yes, go ahead.
That's correct, Alderman Clee. Just to add a bit more detail about that, there are a few other requirements, and ultimately the relationship between the city and the developer will be memorialized in a grant agreement, and thank you for giving me an opportunity just to clarify that. This legislation also allows the city and the mayor specifically to enter into a grant agreement that will lay out about 15 to 20 specific provisions of how that reimbursement will happen. One of the last ones of which is actually the fact that in the event that the activities are not done in accordance with what we've agreed to, Blaylock may be forced to pay the money back to the city, or ultimately the reimbursement will not happen. So there are other requirements as a part of that relationship, and those will be memorialized in a grant agreement that this authorizes the mayor to enter into.
Follow-up, Alderman Clee?
Yes, just a quick follow-up. So is there, the $500,000, 100% of it goes to the Blaylock, and there's no administrative fees that are taken off that from the city, correct? The whole 500 goes to them. Again, just a full pass-through with everything that you've said.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
That is correct. We don't charge any staff time to this. There's limited administration. So yes, that's correct. It's 100% pass-through.
Thank you.
Yes.
So just from any other questions for clarification? Just for a little more clarification, this is having the public hearing tonight. It's going to be on the budget following this meeting. The budget will vote on it, and then it'll have final passage on the August 13th meeting, and it will have to be by roll call and 10 votes, since this is a supplemental appropriation to the FY. It said 24, was that right? 25.
25.
Might want to just check the legislation. I'm pretty sure it's at 24, but anyway.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
All right. So, having heard the explanation, I'll now call for testimony in favor of R 24-063. Anyone wish to? Testimony in favor? None? And I will take testimony in opposition to R 24-063. Seeing none? Once again, testimony in favor of R 24-063. Seeing none, and once again, testimony in opposition of R 24-063. Seeing none, I will call the public hearing on resolution R 24-063 closed at 7:11 p.m. I'll now open the public hearing on resolution R 24-066 at 7:11 p.m. R 24-066 is relative to the supplemental appropriation of $301,026.90 of FY 2024 unanticipated revenue of Fund Number 7024, Opioid Abatement Expendable Trust Fund. Is there anyone here to speak to that? Director Bagley.
Good evening, and thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone, for hearing this acceptance of the supplemental appropriation of the $301,026.90 into the Opioid Abatement Expendable Trust Fund. This will be another appropriation from the opioid abatement settlement that we're expecting over the next, I now think that it'll be over the next 16 years. These are funds that go into the expendable trust fund that we use to help support some of our partnering organizations' work around abatement of opioids, as well as it has also supported the overnight shelter that we had last year, and some of the funds are also used to support individuals with getting them treatment and helping them have access to their driver's licenses, birth certificates, so that we could get them into other services. And so I'm hoping that we will vote in favor of receiving these funds. It will bring the account amount up to $587,793 with the appropriation of these funds to be used for those purposes.
Are there any clarifying questions on this resolution that you'd like to ask Director Bagley?
Just a point of order, did we lose the Zoom?
Whoop,
No. Do we lose everything?
we have it on our screen. There
I'm
we-
still here.
That was weird.
No further questions.
All right. Again, are there any clarifying questions for Director Bagley on this resolution? Thank you, Director Bagley.
Thank you.
All right. So now on the public hearing for R 24-066, is there anyone that wishes to testify in favor of this resolution? Seeing none, is there anyone that wishes to testify in opposition to this resolution? Seeing none, once again, testimony in favor of R 24-066. None. And once again, testimony in opposition of R 24-066. Seeing none. I'll now call the public hearing on resolution R 24-066 closed at 7:14 PM. And the next item on, do you want, President Wilshire, do you want to take over from this point, or do you want me to keep?
Go ahead.
All right, communications requiring only procedural actions and written reports from liaisons.
From Mr. San Durfee, Planning Manager. Reason, referral to the Board of Aldermen on Ordinance 024-22, amending the zoning map by rezoning land situated south of Burke Street and east of Ingle Street, north of Salmon Brook, and west of a line running north and south perpendicular to Burke Street, which is 450 feet, .220 feet easterly of the intersection with Major Drive and Burke Street from C Urban Residence, RC, to C Urban Residence with Mixed-Use Overlay District, RCMU.
If there being no objection, I'll accept the communication and place it on file. Unfinished business resolutions.
Before us tonight is 0-24-22, amending the zoning map by rezoning the land situated south of Burke Street and east of Ingle Street, north of Salmon Brook, and west of a line running north and south perpendicular to Burke Street, which is 450.20 feet easterly of the intersection of Major Drive and Burke Street from C Urban Residence, RC, to C Urban Residence with Mixed-Use Overlay District, RCMU.
Alderman Govia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will move for final passage of O-24-022 by roll call and would like to speak to that motion.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So this legislation before us was in front of the Planning and Economic Development Committee last week. We had our public hearing and took a vote on it. It came out of committee unanimously. The legislation enables changing in zonings for the redevelopment of Menard homes and will enable a plan for 274 units over 3- and 4-story buildings. Considering the opposition that we heard during the hearing, I personally feel that it will work its way out during the planning board stages. For those reasons, I ask for our board's favorable opinion on that. Thank you.
Discussion? Alderman Senate?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, just to sort of piggyback off of what my colleague from Ward 1 had indicated regarding the opposition during the public hearing, this is a very early stage step in this process. This is really just setting the table for what is to take place at the planning board. This is not a referendum on the eventual site plan that'll be presented next Thursday, August 1st at the planning board. This is simply setting the zoning table to allow for it so that they can make their case. The planning board will have the final say on that. Thank you.
Just for clarification, any change to any city zoning has to come before the Board of Aldermen, so that's what this piece is.
No, I'm aware.
And I believe Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I watched the meeting, I heard the opposition of it. I got caught up watching the meeting, figuring out where this was and what was gonna happen, and what I completely glazed over, and I know Director Sullivan is here, and I know he has it at the tip of his fingers, but I was just curious what the difference, high level, is between what it currently is as the RC, coded as RC, going to mixed-use overlay. What's the prime difference in that zoning change?
Director Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alderman Sullivan, the prime difference is that with the mixed-use overlay overlaying over the existing zoning that's in place, the ability to be more flexible with density and other dimensional requirements is created by passing authority to the planning board to actually modify the underlying zoning. And that can come in, again, density, it can come in setbacks, it could even come in the actual uses that are allowed. Here, where the zoning's being tied to a very specific project, there's a fairly predictable outcome of what this zoning will produce. Alderman Jettie asked a great question at the public hearing, actually, about is there a guarantee that that's actually what will be, what the yield will be? No, but we have an active application in front of the planning board, so there's a fairly good chance that the development product will look exactly as what's been proposed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And any project that goes forward still have to go through the planning board process. So, any other questions? Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, so,
Reiterate your comment from the...
no,
Go ahead.
no, I made it at the meeting and I heard the response, and so I'm satisfied with that. But my question is, why are we dealing with this at this special meeting? Why isn't it going through the normal course? Is there a time deadline that we're facing?
I believe since we don't meet again until August as a full Board of Aldermen, the timing so we can get to the planning board ahead of that is why it's being heard tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? The clerk, please call the roll.
Okay, will be a roll call vote. And let's see, Alderman O'Brien votes yea. Alderman Moran.
Yes.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Yes.
Alderman Gavea.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderman Clemens is out, so disregard, please. Alderman Senate.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Theobald.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
And Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes 13.
Okay, another motion by Alderman O'Brien.
Yes, I do. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that the July 22nd, 2024 special meeting of the Board of Aldermen be so adjourned by roll call.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes. Alderman Moran.
Yes.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Yes.
Alderman Gavea.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Nay.
Nay. Alderman Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderman Clemens is not present, excuse me. Alderman Senate.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Theobald,
Yes.
Alderman Clay,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
and Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we have 12 yeas, 1 nay. We're adjourned at 7:22 PM.
Ben not being here.
Review committee to order. It's July 22nd, 2024. We're in the Aldermanic Chamber, and it's 7:24 PM.
This won't be here.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Huh? This one? Yeah, thank you. No. Allow the clerk a second just to catch up on,
That's budget.
there you go. Okay, the roll call will be Alderman O'Brien is present. Alderwoman Timmons is absent.
Oh, no. The budget committee only.
Oh, Budget Committee, sorry. I'll catch up. Too much time off. Alderman Theobald?
Here.
Alderman Sullivan?
Here.
Alderwoman at large, Shoshana Kelly?
Here.
Alderman at large, Laurie Wilshire?
Here.
And I did say Alderman at large, Michael O'Brien is present, and Alderman Richard Dowd.
President, did you miss Tim Senate?
Uh,
I think he did. He's here.
He's here, but is he, yeah, I'm sorry. I missed you.
Alderman chopped liver.
I got you now.
Let's see.
Who's your buddy?
Also in attendance is Director Sullivan and Director Bagley. Alright. First item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on any of the items on the agenda this evening? Please name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brad Westgate. I'm a lawyer with Weiner Bennett, 402 Amherst Street, Suite 302 in Nashua. And I appear before you representing Blaylock Holdings LLC, the prospective developer of the Mohawk Tannery site. Bernie Plant of Blaylock is also with me. I just wanted to very briefly comment in support of the proposal for the city to accept, and this board to accept the grant from Invest NH that Director Sullivan discussed at the special meeting just a few moments ago. We appreciate the actions the board has taken throughout this project. We still have more actions to go. This is one component of it. Director Sullivan nicely detailed the mechanisms for the grant, and we would respectfully ask that the committee give a favorable recommendation to the full board for accepting this and approving this resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else for public comment on anything being addressed this evening? No? All right. Communications,
There are none.
unfinished business, ordinances, the O-24-017 is going to now be heard on August 26th, and I'd like to make a motion to table O-24-017 until that time. That's acceptable. The motion on the floor is to table. All in favor?
Yeah, Alderman Tebow will, you're gonna make the motion to table?
He just
Okay, you did.
Yeah.
Fine. Roll call.
No.
Nope.
No needed. We got a full.
Mel, drop off.
Zip right through this.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That's tabled.
Okay, new business resolutions. R-24-63. Relative to the acceptance and appropriation of $500,000 from the State of New Hampshire Department of Business and Economic Affairs, invest in the New Hampshire Demolition Grant Program, and approval for the city to grant said funds to Blaylock Holdings LLC for demolition of the Mohawk Tannery site through a grant agreement. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Motions for final passage. Any discussion? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you very much. I'm going to support this. I just had some clarifying questions carried over from the Special Board of Aldermen. Director Sullivan mentioned during his comments in our meeting prior that, unless I didn't hear it right, are these funds unanticipated overall, or are they unanticipated just in this fiscal year?
Director Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I know what you're asking, but if I get this, if it doesn't answer your question, please let me know. Each year, as part of the fiscal year budget, as you know, Alderman Sullivan, we actually estimate a number of grants that we expect to receive over the coming year, and they're included in the budget. This grant was not on that list. We did not anticipate that we would be successful in obtaining it during this fiscal year, and so it was not included. Therefore, discussing internally with the finance team and legal, we need to actually do that appropriation, hence the action before you this evening. So in this fiscal year 25, this grant was not anticipated. We actually did anticipate a similar Invest New Hampshire grant as part of a prior fiscal year, so we didn't come forward for this process, but we had anticipated that prior one.
Okay. Follow up, please.
Follow up?
Thanks. I believe in the presentation that we had, we had outlined costs and where the money might come from, different buckets of money to help offset the overall cost. Was this $500,000 included in that breakdown? Or is it truly unanticipated?
No, Alderman Sullivan, that's a great question, and I may just want to consult the most recent presentation that we gave on this, because that's been, the financial situation's been changing a little bit over time. I believe that these monies, and I'm almost certain that these monies were contemplated in the most recent presentation on the financial package behind the project. I can confirm and look back at my notes in just a second here. So not unanticipated in that sense. We were trying to seek these monies, but we're not certain they were actually going to be awarded, hence their lack of inclusion in the budget.
Okay.
Yes,
So-
but this was always part of what we anticipated. We had actually tried to look at another Invest New Hampshire grant program that ultimately did not play out. We weren't eligible for that based on the project. That's why we pivoted in this direction.
Okay.
So a little clarification. So the cost to do the demolition were part of the project.
Yep.
But now it's being, rather than being paid for in another way, it's being paid for by this grant from the state.
Yes.
And because we have to take that money from the state and put it in our coffers and then expend it, it's unanticipated revenue for this fiscal year. So that's why we have to do this action.
Can I follow up on that question, on that point?
Sure.
So since this is a grant that we got money not from whatever reason, overpayment of taxes or parking revenue or whatever, we are appropriating it. Does this $500,000 go towards supplemental appropriations that will then show up in the next fiscal year being tacked on to the general fund budget? So does this drive up the fiscal year 2025 budget?
Not necessarily. It depends on the other anticipated grants that we had in the budget. If all of those appeared, yes. If 500,000 of those grants didn't, then no. And you probably need a better answer. I would check with the CFO.
Okay, I'll do that.
I would not want to speak for him. All set, Alderman Sullivan?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Director Sullivan through the chair. So the demolition, was that our cost originally? Has that always been our cost, or where are we helping the developers in this case
Director
get
Sullivan?
extra money towards it by getting this grant through the city? Is that how it goes?
Director Sullivan?
Yes, so great question. So these, demolition is the name of the grant. I just want to clarify this first before responding directly to your question. But in discussions with the Invest New Hampshire administrators at the state level, it was determined that not only is demolition in the traditional sense permissible, in fact, remediation is as well. But really, these monies are being directed towards foundation removal, that sort of thing. So it's sort of a an in-the-middle cost. I would answer your question by saying that the remediation costs are fully, well, with the exception of EPA monies that are flowing in, obviously, those are really the expense of the developer, the redeveloper. So these were not monies that were anticipated on the city share being bought down. This is a separate set of monies that we're now inducing through the grant program.
Okay.
So if you think back to other numbers that have been presented with this project, $2 million loans, $2.5 million loans, those numbers have not changed as a result of these monies coming in. This is, quite frankly, we would have not been eligible to apply for this grant, so it's almost, in a sense, it's not a free $500,000 into the project, but it's only eligible to be used for this kind of thing. The municipality could not choose to use it itself, so it's like a free set of monies going in, albeit coming from the state of New Hampshire, so not free.
So free money.
Not free money,
Gotcha.
but you understand my point.
Yeah.
Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. I plan to support this. It makes sense, and I appreciate that we found some additional monies for this project. It's very important. When you go to check your notes on the financial package, would you just share it again?
Sure, happy
Want to
to.
be up to date? Thank you.
Absolutely.
I know I can say one thing, this is a great thing to have happen after having lived here as long as I have. Any other questions? Thank you, Director Sullivan.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, the motion on the floor is for final passage of R 24-063. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Also before us this evening is R-24-065, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the Nashua Board of Education and the Nashua Teachers Union, Local 1044, AFT-AFL-CIO, Unit D, Food Service Workers, from September 1st, 2024 through August 31st, 2027. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Motion on the floor is to recommend final passage. Questions? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I have some concerns about this contract, and I understand that we can only vote up or down on the financial piece, but here are my concerns. I went back, and when I first looked at this contract, that first year number looked a little high to me, and then I remember it was one of the first pieces of legislation that I took up as a new alderman approving this. So I went back and I looked at the old resolution, and in fiscal year 24, the last year of the contract, we approved this, 1.375 million to be paid. Number of employees in analysis were 90. The first year, the general fund base, fiscal year 2024, has 110 employees covered, and we are building off a base pay calculation of $2,054,000. So in reality, it says it's an 11.14% increase. Technically speaking, from the contract that we approved via resolution back in 2022, it was the summer of 22, that's a 66% lift. Because we're going from the last year of the contract that we're coming out of, which is 1.375 million, and we're raising it to 2.283 million. And there's 20 more people in the department that weren't there.
There's somebody here that can just explain
Oh,
that
thank
from the
goodness.
school department.
Sorry, we're newer,
Okay.
so
All right.
I wasn't sure if you wanted us up here yet. I
And when they say
apologize,
new,
Alderman.
they're brand new.
Oh.
Because Mr. Donovan just retired.
Oh,
So if you would introduce yourselves
Sure.
first so that they can get,
Absolutely. So good evening, everybody. So I'm Crystal DeGray. I'm the new Chief Operating Officer who took over for Dan Donovan.
And I'm Dahlia Daigle, the Food Service Director. I've been here since, hi, how are you? 6 years
Hi,
now.
Dahlia.
So
so what
Alderman.
happened? That's really my big question is,
Yep.
if we approved a contract that said head count at 90, and now, I mean, we're still in, I think we're still in the contract. We approved a certain amount of money, and now we're building a base off of a larger base than what we had when we approved the contract.
Sure.
Before we go too far, you know they're self-sufficient, that the monies aren't coming from the city, right?
Okay, but
They get the monies from, if you want to explain how the contract works.
Sure, absolutely. So food service is the only union that is 100% revenue generating. So no no burden on the taxpayers whatsoever. There is an increase of 24 positions from the last contract. So right now, the food service team is actually down 24 positions. So I think that's the difference that you're seeing. Roughly, it's off by 4, right? 90 and 24 is 114. So a couple things, I guess, to point out as we look at the food service contract. So food service has been struggling to fill the positions. There are 24 positions that are down since COVID. So Dahlia, the team, the food service team, would really ideally like to hire an additional 24 folks. The starting pay really was under $15 an hour. This 11% increase in year one, fiscal year 25, actually would go ahead and bring that up to $15.31 an hour for entry-level positions. That will go ahead and make us competitive in the market. Food service, as mentioned, is funded themselves, revenue generating. There's new regulations in place from the state that we as a food service team can actually only carry 3 months worth of expenditures in our special revenue fund. And at this point, we have about $8 million more than what we can have in that. Therefore, kind of supporting the 11% increase in year one, and then 3.5 year two, in fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27. Yes, we currently have 1.8 million right now. We'll drop down to $1 million. Sorry about that. And then again, food service is generating its own revenue. Again, no cost to the taxpayers whatsoever. And what did I miss, Dahlia? Anything?
Everything.
Okay.
Okay.
Not sure if that gives you some clarity.
So are you off 24 from the 90, or are you off 24 from the 110?
So 110 would include the 24 open positions.
So you want to get to 110, you're not there yet?
Correct. We want to get to.
You want to get to 110.
Post-COVID, we're at 114, so we've been deficient 36 positions. So just currently now, we filled whatever the difference between 24 to 36 positions, so we're still at the hard 24 positions.
Okay.
Most of them are entry-level positions
Sure.
that she's trying to fill.
Okay. And then,
Follow-up?
yes, please. So the 110, I was looking in the fiscal year under the education, and the reason, because it is self-supporting, that's the reason why I don't see food service employees in the head count for fiscal year 25, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
All set?
Yep.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when you say self-funding or self-sufficient, that's the cost that I guess kids buy their school lunches, is that?
Yes, Alderman, that is accurate. So the cost that is being taken in from either the students or the teachers buying lunches.
And is it possible that you couldn't generate enough to pay everybody this money?
At this point, we have about a 50% participation rate, so we base that on a reimbursement too. So with it being 42% free and reduced, we do have a high reimbursement rate because of that. So when doing the calculations with Dan prior to Crystal, we thought all of that through to be able to afford this.
Follow up?
Yes.
So that doesn't include, will that include any increases to food service at all, or prices of any food in the schools?
Currently, because we're over budget and we were able to have a waiver this year. So I'm gonna request for a waiver this year and not increase the pricing for paid.
All right, great, thank you.
Any other questions? No. Crystal, Mr. Smith and I would like to meet with you soon.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Good.
I'm coming over tomorrow to meet with Rose and kind of do an introduction, so, but we can get some time on the calendar.
Okay,
Absolutely.
sounds good. All right, thank you.
Okay,
All right,
thank
have a
you.
great evening. Thank you.
All right, motion on the floor is RO 2465. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, also before us this evening is R-24-066, relative to the supplemental appropriation of 301 million, what's that?
301,000.
301,000. Why don't you read the number?
$301,026.90.
Thank you. For unanticipated revenue into funds 7024 opioid abatement expendable trust fund.
All right, motion on the floor is for final passage. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Also before us this evening is R-24-068, relative to the transfer of $246,000 from Department 193 Debt Services account 75200, interest to the Department 159 Hydrants Fire Protection account 54835, hydrant fees.
Okay, you've heard the motion for final passage. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business ordinances,
There are none.
tabled in committee.
There is none.
General discussion. Nope, none. Public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to public comment, other than city employees?
Oh,
He doesn't live in
I
Nashville.
have an answer for a question if
Just
anyone's
kidding.
interested.
Doesn't even live in Nashville.
Good evening, Matt Sullivan, Community Development Director. The response to the question about the financial package relative to the $500,000, those monies were actually within the master development agreement that came before the Board of Aldermen. I neglected to remember that. Attorney Westgate reminded me of that. So relative to the PowerPoints that were shown a year ago or a year and a half, I can't recall if it's in there, but it was within the master development agreement as one of the sources of funds to the project.
Good, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Remarks by Alderman? Anyone? No? None? Okay, Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we be so adjourned.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 7:47 PM. Thank you, everyone.